Hey there, I'm Mark from Spectrum Pulse, and today we have from Jack Garratt, Pillars. So it's been 5 years since we last got a Jack Garratt album, where Love, Death, and Dancing was far from perfect in 2020, but had enough nervy energy and intriguing production and songwriting choices, plus Better was a total jam, to have me very curious where he would wind up, especially given the number of connections he had made behind the scenes in co-writing, co-producing, but also that this project would be self-produced and self-described as an album of love songs. Not specifically love songs to someone, but showcasing various types of love, from romantic to platonic to even self-love, which kind of might run at cross-tension to his own self-described people-pleasing impulses. But thus with Pillars, that manifested in multiple forms, taking his willowy UK singer-songwriter blended with dance electronics template into more languid R&B inspired grooves, trying to accentuate a more soulful palette in both the cadence and vocal delivery, but also triggering this thought of, why didn't I make the Bon Iver parallel 5 years ago? Because you might have missed it then, but it's kind of inescapable now with the auto-tuned folk pop electronics, the throaty delivery dipping into a pretty credible falsetto, and especially given the R&B inflected swerve that Justin Vernon himself attempted this year on Sable Fable. Hell, with songs like Two Left Feet, it's not that far removed from what Ed Sheeran has been doing in the 2020s, complete with the overcompression and the drums being louder and more blown out than they should be. Now, Jack Garratt is a more stridently elastic and less subtle performer. I would argue he's got a wider range than both of them, and his compositions feel a little bit more immediate, almost funky as a result. Ready, Steady, Go, it's a pretty fun throwback in that mold. Honestly wish there had been more in that lane, reportedly inspired by his meeting of Stevie Wonder. But how much of that is because the chord progressions also feel a little bit more obvious, on the nose, dare I even say basic. Yet I'm also hesitant to call that a bad thing, because I was more gripped with the heavy multi-track Catherine wheel or the sodden last call hookup on Not Ready to Go Home than a lot of the quivering attempts at homespun indie folk, even despite some pretty nice crescendos on Manifest It'll All Be Alright in the End, and especially that big dance breakdown on Higher. And that circles back to Garratt's often painfully direct lyricism, which often feels like it's simultaneously self-deprecating, how very British of him, but also convinced of all the profound potency due to his honesty from the heart, where even if the poetry is a little more basic, it's still gonna resonate. And you know what, that's fine when you've got a big melodic hook to rely on, but when you strip it back to expose how much of this album is less love songs and more trying to process a breakup that was probably done for the right reasons, trying to identify what he needs in a loving relationship where it actually goes both ways. It's not that I don't empathize. I've lived through enough breakups. I understand the feeling. And you can tell that his 2021 divorce lingers on his mind. But there's something frustratingly cloying and kind of shallow about how he frames these revelations in these relationships. The final song, Big of Me, Flight of B, God, I hate that song title. It's clearly trying to frame the character as being kind of disingenuous, but also not really in his intent, about how he tried to lie in a relationship in order to make his partner happy and ultimately love him, and the collapse when it didn't work, before he tries to spin it into this big life-affirming statement about how love will save us all if we just keep trying. Look, I'm a sucker for messages like this and this sort of arc, but I honestly wound up preferring the willful self-delusion of Catherine Wheel, or the sloppy loneliness of Shaftesbury Avenue, or Not Ready to Go Home, that paradoxically feel more honest than trying to wrap it all up in broadly satisfying pablum that just feels too easy. And that was exactly the same issue I had with Love, Death, and Dancing 5 years ago, and that album was also too self-aware about all of it. I mean, that's the tricky line to walk, being painstakingly honest about one's feelings, even if they are damaging to himself and others around him, but I don't think the sophistication in the writing is really there to pull it off, especially when it all circles back to love is all we need and my feelings were ultimately justified about all of it. You need a little bit more to get me to properly buy in. It's not enough. It feels honestly kind of self-serving. In other words, I don't really hear growth with Pillars so much as a frustrating lateral move. His fundamentals are very sound, but how much of that was driven from obvious and derivative foundations? And while he can structure a pretty good pop song, any swing for deeper depth, it works more in theory than execution. I mean, it's decent, it's got its moments, a couple songs I like, but as much as these Pillars should really work for me, can't help but feel a little disappointed. All I'm gonna say. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you want to see more, please be sure to like, share, drop comments, subscribe. Yeah, this is more negative than I wanted to be. Freely admit, I really wanted this Jack Garratt album to be pretty awesome. I like the idea of going in this R&B swerve. Hell, it worked for Bon Iver. But yeah, there's some moments here that just, it never fully coalesced, and I kept feeling that there should be a little bit more sophistication and nuance. But when you're spraying it all out there, trying to be very honest, there's a line to walk with it before it starts feeling self-serving or self-indulgent. And this one tilted over the line a few too many times. But hey, disagree as much as you want down there, comments below, have fun. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And if y'all want to get involved in helping support the channel, get albums on my schedule, or just yell at me on my Discord, link to my Patreon and YouTube memberships is right over there. Once again, don't feel obligated, tough times, I understand, the option's available. Till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.